All right, thank you very much. I have Ezequiel here. He's my man from Argentina. He is the director of sales in at Workana. If you don't know Workana, please go ahead and check them out. It's a pretty big company in LatAm and Latin America, making change, helping freelancers. But I'm going to let him do the talking here today. So thank you, Ezequiel, for being here. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Paulo, for the invitation. It's really awesome to be in this podcast. It's something I really enjoy and something I didn't do that much during the years. So really glad to be here with you.
All right, thank you very much. So, I wanted to start off by asking about Workana and who does Workana help, basically.
So our new or actually our redefined motto is real work done. So that's the keystone or the main thing, the main pillar of on one side trying to empower freelancers all over Latin America and for the past 3 years also in Southeast Asia. And the interesting thing is that we've been working on this freelance ecosystem for the past 10 years. So way back when this wasn't cool or mainstream as it is right now. So that's one thing. On the other side, a few years ago, we launched Workana Business. That is something that I got on board 6 months ago onto Workana to work on this side of the business where the main objective is with this power of our platform and the hundreds of thousands of freelancers that we have all over Latin America to give big companies scale and flexibility coming from independent talent. So nowadays you have the biggest companies you can imagine. So the Unilever, Johnson and Johnson, or big banks all over Latin America. When in the past years, when a HR director or a CEO sits down to think about the strategy of the year, and they think how are they going to accomplish projects, so how they're going to get to their goals, they usually think on okay, who do I have to hire, and that's usually in-house hires, so traditional hiring. Then maybe you say, okay, I have a few partners, so agencies or whatever that I can trust on. But still in Latin America, and that's different in the States, they don't have in their top of mind yet. That's what we're trying to accomplish and growing on top of that. That having a freelance pool talent is really a good option for them, and that's something we are doing with a few big companies all over Latin America. But our goal for the next years is to get to the numbers we have in the States, where currently over half of the Fortune 500 companies are using freelancers to get their projects done.
Got it. So changing the Latin American mindset and culture, like for them
Exactly.
to have access to great talent without having to, with the flexibility of having a freelancer working for them.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what made you, like, what motivated you to go to Workana, or I mean, what's your why?
So particularly to Workana, for the past 6 years, I helped to develop a boutique UX and development agency called Lab, one of the best quality all around the world. So we got to a point where we were comparing our work with the best agencies in the US, and the work was really good. So we were around 60 or 70 people, and that's although our work was amazing, that was the typical agency model. So we where what I thought or what moved me the most was we had the best talent, and that's why we made the best projects or the best quality. So everything around each of the stages of my past years were around that everything that if you want to do something right, you need the right talent. So when I started speaking with Workana's founders, and it sounded really interesting to me. So okay, how can we scale this up? Because scaling a boutique agency is really difficult. So how can I think of not having 70 designers or developers, but having 3 million or thinking about that amount of talent or the pool. So actually that's like scaling up the impact that I could think of. That was one of the biggest things to move to this new company.
So since sounds like you've been around for a while, what advice would you give to a person who's starting out? Maybe they feel stuck or they want to go into sales, they don't know how to sell. But someone who's starting out, what advice would you give to these people?
So from like a broader perspective, so there's a really interesting exercise to do on your own called Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept where you try to align the things you do best with the things you know how to do, with the things that the market and the people are needing. And that's something I did when I was thinking on a professional change, career change. And that's something everybody should do at least once or even several times to understand really what's your like purpose, right? So where do you want to be on? So I like to sell, I like to meet with people, I like to whatever, I like to do sports. Okay, so maybe I should start thinking on being a sales executive for a sports whatever company. So or creating my own whatever, right? But that's really interesting. And then particularly in sales, I mean. Reading a lot of the best books on sales is always useful, but also doing so, going out to the field and having and having a lot of meetings. That probably you're going to have a lot of really bad ones, but also really many good ones. And something particular for sellers, and this is something I did find in many places is it adds like a lot of value to really sell something that matters to you or that you're really into it. So if you don't really believe in the project, in the product or service or whatever you're selling, or it's something that you wouldn't use in your life, or if you needed it and you would choose, I don't know, maybe another company. So go work for the other company. So that's something that is. For me, is really tied up to the basics of particularly B2B selling, where when people think about if you talk about a seller or someone in sales, people think of the sleazy salesman, the father of Matilda in the movie that tries to sell you a really bad car, but make you think otherwise. And in sales, especially in B2B sales, your only task as a sales executive is to understand what is the client's needs, what is he or she needing, and then decide if there's a fit for you with your product and service, right? So you don't have to be pushing anything or trying to sell something they don't like, and starting from the beginning, so really believing in the product or in the service you're selling. I think it's really key to then have a stronger message, right?
Well, that's powerful. So let's say, for instance, I'm a salesperson. I want to do great and achieve great results for my team. Then what I need to do first is understand the other person, see like help the person. So understand the person, have active listening. Then jump in and say, hey, maybe the best solution for you is this and not that, or maybe it's actually that company, not our company, and then like help them decide. Is that roughly, did I say it right, or maybe not?
Yeah, exactly. And that's Matthew Dixon has a really interesting book called The Challenger Sale. That is one of, for me, the best books that anyone in sales should read. And it's a scientific study over, I don't know, I think like 5,000 sellers, top performers, where this guy tries to understand what are the common traits of these sellers. And some of them are the ones that you just announced. So, for example, being a really good active listener, so listening more than what you talk, And then other ones that are really interesting, and that's why, because the book is called the Challenger Sale, is that you don't have to try to sell anything. You just have to, as you are the one who knows, you need to listen a lot, understand what the client is needing, then challenge what the client is saying maybe that they need, because sometimes they could be the thing that the customer is always right is something that I don't really like at all. So sometimes the customer is not sure what they need, and you are the expert that needs to help them to find that way. And something interesting is that maybe what they need is your product, but you should be smart enough to understand that maybe it's not your product when in the middle of the call, and just say something like, "Hey, I definitely think from what you're speaking that my solution is not the best for your needs. I'm going to refer you to whatever solution I think is the best." And that's something we did a lot at Aerolab, where some person came with an idea to develop a product, and we knew that product was, I know, was 100K, and maybe our solution was, hey, hire someone you know that knows how to do websites in 1 day with a template, via a $50 template, and try your idea or your hypothesis with this. Let's talk in 6 months. And we knew that we maybe lost that sale, but at the same time, a lot of those clients then 6 months later, when they had funding from VCs or whatever, came back to work with us, or for example, they then referred to someone they knew that was in the best fit. So yeah, in the end, you have to be the best advisor possible and give the advice in the best interest of your potential client and not yourself. And that maybe includes not doing that particular sale.
That's amazing. I really like that, and I'll definitely check out the book. So you said that you actually don't like at all the fact that the customer is always right? And what other advice you see out there that maybe are wrong? The worst advice for a salesperson, what would that be for you?
I mean, the first one, and I'm going back to the book, and the easiest one for newer salesmen is to automatically go into pitch mode. So as soon as the call starts and you are in a place, and this is maybe even before the call, so it's probably happened to you, but you get an email where the only thing you get from a cold email, that again I don't like them that much, but is, "Hey, I'm Pablo. I do this. So in the other end, in the receiving end of the messages, what do I care? You are reaching out to me. What do you want? So and sometimes we even do that on sales calls, where we just go into pitch mode. We start pitching all our best features or whatever, and the best case studies. And on the other side, the only thing the person is thinking is, why do I care about it? So flip that script, get into questions, a lot of questions, listening. Try to, at least that's what worked for me. Try to get the other part to start speaking, to getting information, understanding a lot, and really going deep into what are their current problems, what other solutions did they try. Are you the first company they are speaking to, or are you the last one? So try to get as much information as possible, and then in the end say, okay, yeah, from all what you're telling, I think we did a lot of these things with these similar clients. I think this could definitely work for you, and speak a little bit about your solution to their problem, but not the other way around. That's maybe the biggest one. And maybe the other one is be really good at understanding who do you want to sell to and who do you want to work with. Because it's really easy to get lost in just trying to get your revenue numbers up. And maybe all of that revenue that is incoming is from the wrong people. For example, clients that you know that are impossible to scale. And you have to be intelligent enough to understand that sometimes you have to let's call it fire some clients that you already have. But it's always painful because it's revenue you lose. That is something that, for example, if you have to explain that to a manager or whatever, you have to be intelligent enough to say, hey, I know this client gives us X revenue, but we cannot put effort into it anymore. It's not going to grow. It's not going to work for us. It's outside our scope. Just know that we are going to do this cleaning, and we're going to get better in the future. So that's maybe another one that is really interesting.
And and I would like to link that to like human relationships, right? So for instance, like active listening to maybe to your wife or to your kids, right? To your friend, like instead of saying me, like, hey, I did this, or someone shares something with you, hey, I went to, I don't know, to this movie. Oh yeah, me too. It was awful. I mean, I didn't like it. And you're like, okay, but it's not a real conversation. It becomes just a monologue from your end, meaning the salesy, we hate that guy person, as opposed to a consultative person that really listens to you. And same with having relevant clients with working with you. Like you want your friends to be really cool with you and really, you enjoy working with them, or you enjoy spending time with your friends. So that's good advice both for sales and for life.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I'm curious about maybe mindset. What would be the mindset behind a salesperson?
So it's interesting. So thinking like really, um, if we divide a little bit, like for example, for me into inbound, for example, inbound and outbound, where okay, you can have many roles, but for me, something that I found that is interesting is the inbound people. So that usually they're so that the inside sales or they are getting the leads from somewhere. Um, for me, that person that then is probably an AE, an account executive that then has to go on with the process and, for example, if it's B2B, be able to sign the contracts and speak a lot of time with procurement and other areas. I think something really interesting for inbound sales is being patient. So understanding so maintaining cadence, but always thinking that some things and when the companies get bigger, they take time. So be patient and like just try to follow your cadence and follow the process and be sure you are going forward. And when you think of an SDR in terms of outbound, is for me it's the opposite. So they have to be really impatient people, so that the targets are a little bit more short-ended. So be sure you are contacting 100 companies a day or whatever metric you see, and be sure to hit that quota each day. That's maybe something in terms of mindset, depending on where you are in the sales process. But then in terms of mindset, particularly, I like to think about sales, and more when you speak about B2B, to be very network and relational. Sometimes it's difficult to see the ROI for going to an event or going to have a lot of conversations with people that maybe looking from the outside could seem a little bit random, but in the end, those are the ones in the end that yield the most interesting results. So that's interesting. There's in terms of mindset, there's a model, a framework from Jacob van der Kolk that's called the bow tie week method. So he has a series of books called Sales as a Science. And mindset wise, I think it's one of the, or at least the one I think I feel most identified with in terms of breaking down the sales process into a process. So into smaller parts. It's not just speak with someone or market your product and then make revenue. So there's a lot of steps in the middle, and you should have a specific process for each step. You should have specific people for each step with specific skills. And doing each step perfectly is what, optimizing each step is what then is going to be yield the best results at the end. And that's particularly the one I like the most, and the one we are implementing now at Workana, a little bit more thoroughly. Um, that's a little bit about that.
Yeah. And what about, so thinking back when you were starting, like, what would advice would you give yourself, your 20-year-old self, whether before going into sales, or maybe it was before then, or maybe, the career change you talked about, like that breaking point? What would you say to that, Ezequiel?
So I studied economics, and when I finished university, I thought, so my first thing was, I'm good with numbers, so my first jobs were a little bit more related to, let's call it, data analytics, or a really analytical process. So I worked a little bit in logistics. I worked at revenue management for an airline. And then I also worked at product analytics at Mercado Libre. And I thought that was the thing I liked the most. But I'm going back to what we talked about, the Ikigai. That kind of analysis was always very like on your own, and yourself sitting with hard data on the computer, and then getting like analyzing that data and giving advice to other people in the different companies. And from my personal life, I always liked a lot being around people, speaking with people, understanding problems, and understanding what people need and stuff. So I like something clicked a few years into my professional career, that I had to be more around people in my day to day. So speaking with people, understanding issues and trying to solve them, and not only with data. That's something that helped me throughout all my career, and still is. It's really interesting early in your career to understand how to see data. But I quickly understood that my thing was on the other side. So something that had to do with storytelling or sales or something that way. And yeah, like maybe my 20-year-old self is to hear a little bit more on what my personal traits were, to understand that a career. And also maybe now looking back, trying earlier in my career or in my life to launch a company on my own. So something, doesn't matter how ambitious or how big or small, but something on your own. It's one of the best. It's something that I did like further down. So have my own projects, and that's something that is it's a really good source to learn from things you do, good or bad, whatever. But it's really interesting to have it early in your professional life.
All right, and talking about maybe being an entrepreneur, having this entrepreneurial spirit and creating things on your own. Like, do you have a favorite failure, or something that maybe was super bad at the end, at the very beginning, but then it was a great teacher for you in the long run?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm trying to think about it. Let me get back to that one.
Okay.
Maybe something comes to my mind that is interesting.
All right. Yeah, no worries. So, and I'm curious about, besides the Matthew Dixon, book, maybe what
Yeah.
other piece of advice would you share with people?
So yeah, the Jacob Undercloth one series are really interesting, and then there's two other books that I really liked related to sales. I got to them because I was in this creative space or this agency space, and these two writers are like really interesting in that space. But I think they apply to any kind of B2A sales or whatever. One is called The Business of Expertise. That's by David C. Baker. It's really that one is really interesting and tells on how you when you no matter the industry or whatever what you're selling, you have to be the expert and position yourself on that point. So when you try to sell and that drips down to a lot of ideas on if you are the expert, for example, you if you are a consultant or whatever service you give, you shouldn't give discounts or you shouldn't like undervalue your knowledge or whatever. You shouldn't work for free, for example, the typical thing that designers suffer. So nobody goes to a Starbucks and says, okay, I want this kind of coffee, and you don't say, okay, let me try it first, and then if I like it, I will pay. No, it's the other way around. So that should be the norm in everything. And the other one related to that one, it's a really easy to read book by Blair Enns. It's called Win Without Pitching Manifesto. So it's the complete opposite thing on what agencies normally do. That is create a really big pitch that you work on for 2 weeks and you present that to your client, and then the client says, no, I don't like this, or whatever. It's like flipping that completely, and instead of proposals, he says to have really good conversations. Instead of really long proposals, just having the general things to agreement. Why you should never give discounts just because the client is asking. Why should be, and this one is really, I think that the most interesting one. One of the chapters is called We Will Talk About Money Early. And that's one of the biggest things. And the thing he says is that in let's say in a personal life, in our personal life, usually in most places in the world, in most cultures, it's really bad. It's not well seen. It's not good to speak about money with your friends or with your family. So I make this amount of money a year or whatever. But in terms of when we are in a business argument, so in a business situation, he says that it's completely the opposite. That if you are not talking really early about money in a business situation, you are not a good business guy.
Oh, okay.
And that one is really interesting because usually business people are afraid of just throwing their price and saying, hey, yes, this is our business, this is our service, and it's $100K for a website, because they think, okay, no, that's he's going to be scared, the client's not going to like it or whatever. But it's better to speak about that really early, so the first 20 minutes on your conversation, and not have 10 meetings. And when you say that the project is going to be $100K, they say that they only have $5K. And that's maybe the biggest thing in that book. So Win Without Pitching is really, really small. It's actually edited in the hard copy. It's edited like a Bible, so the same material like and it's really, really interesting.
Great, thank you very much for sharing that. So before we end up the conversation, where can we find you, Ezequiel, online?
So my LinkedIn is the easiest one. There's nobody else in the world, I think, with my same name. So it's Ezequiel Apelbaum, Apelbaum, or Ezequiel at Workana.com. Ezequiel at Workana.com. That's the easiest one. Just write, and I can go further into any topic or whatever you like to go into.
All right, Ezequiel, thank you very much. Any final thoughts before we jump off or anything else?
No, again, feel free to anyone to go to get in touch with me, and in general terms, like just remember that no matter, and that's again I think I remember it's from the Challenger Sale or other book, but that's from a book called To Sell Is Human. From that one is another one really interesting. That the book says that everybody is in sales, so it doesn't matter, and it's like really going back to this podcast. Doesn't matter if you are on finance or if you are on HR or sales. Only 1 out of 10 people usually have the sales word on their LinkedIn title. But then all of the other ones, you always have to sell something to your boss, sell an idea or so whatever. You always have to sell an idea of where to go to on vacation to your family or your friends or whatever. So that's something really, really interesting. Just like to move others to do something. So yeah, everybody should read this book and practice a few of the things that we said during the interview.
All right. Thank you very much, Ezequiel. This was a great conversation. I'm so glad you were able to share this knowledge with us. And thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks to you, Pablo. Bye.